When the world was wall-to-wall war in Iraq, in Britain, there was just one other story that gripped the nation. The trial of an army major, his wife, and an accomplice who cheated their way to £1 million in the TV game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The scam wasn't terribly sophisticated. When the choices of answer were read out by the quiz show host, the accomplice in the audience coughed at the right answer. The three have been found guilty, and this weekend millions tuned in to watch for the first time the actual programme. The Major and his wife, both now convicted fraudsters, are my guests today. Major Charles Ingram and Diana Ingram, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What does it feel like to be convicted fraudsters and described like that?
Absolutely awful. This didn't happen. If I could just mention two things, and then I'll try not to cover them again. Firstly, none of us cheated on that show. There was no planning to cheat, no attempt to cheat. There was no thinking behind, an attempt to cheat. And the second thing is that there was no scam.
But a jury of 12 men and women, good and true?
They did. At the end of the day, based on the evidence, the verdict was perverse. Now, I'm not criticising the jury. The jury are perfectly entitled to make their decision based on, obviously, the process that went through court. But at the end of the day, things have happened in court, and certainly before court, and most definitely afterwards as well, that have conned the criminal justice system and, indeed, the general public in this country.
But the evidence was presented fairly, and you had your day in court. You had a defence counsel who were looking after your interests. There was a prosecution counsel, and a verdict was reached in the fairest way possible.
At the end of the day, Celador, the police, that's SO6, otherwise known as the Celebrity Squad, and the CPS have known for a long time that they had a very weak case. And what they have done prior to the trial is they've treated it like a jigsaw with ill-fitting jigsaw pieces, and they've crammed them together, and those jigsaw pieces they've had missing, they have papered over the cracks.
We'll come to all those issues, Celador, the makers of the programme, what happened in the studio that night in a moment. I just want to take you back to when you had won.
Yes.
The £1 million. We see you on the set hugging each other. It's been a very tense evening.
Very emotional, yes.
And then you go apparently to your dressing room and there's a row.
That is simply untrue. There was not a row. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know why people were drawn to that conclusion, but there was not a row, and we made that very clear in court. I know that you'll agree with me.
Absolutely, there was no row.
What was the atmosphere like in the dressing room?
I think we were exhausted. I mean, I felt as if I'd been through a laundry wringer, and we were shocked. I mean, it was a success beyond our wildest dreams, frankly.
Diana knew that I'd taken at least one risk, and she felt that I'd taken a number of risks, and indeed I'm not surprised by my behaviour on the night. And she was emotionally drained at the end of that evening. Can I just point out...
Angry at all about having taken too many risks?
No, she wasn't angry at all. No, most definitely not.
We've just got three witnesses who said Nigel Norman, the security guard, heard loud voices and a window slammed. Someone else talked of you telling him to shut up. Jessica, the researcher, said that there was a tense atmosphere. Rob Taylor, a Celador executive, also picked up on the tension. I mean...
Right, there are 2 points, if I may, to that. Firstly, I don't know why they assumed there was an argument, but we could well have, because the show was still going on, because I was the first contestant on the night, so we were in our room on our own, and the show was going on, so most people were involved. While we were in the room, we did make a number of mobile telephone calls. We may, for example, and I'm not sure whether this was the cause of what they thought was an argument or not, I don't know, but we certainly didn't row or have an argument. But it may have been that we were talking loudly against each other, as it were, on our mobile telephones, which people tend to do. That may have been the cause. I know that at the time the window was open.
Eve Winstanley, researcher on the programme, she says a security guard sort of pointed out that there was shouting coming from their dressing room. A window was open, so you know, as soon as he said that, we all kind of listened, and of course there were raised voices coming from there, and the security guard went a bit nearer to the window to see if he could hear what was being said, and the window was slammed shut.
We did not have a row or an argument. At the end of the day, Chris Tarrant joined us in our dressing room after the recording, and he said that our behaviour was perfectly normal for a £1 million winner.
OK, let's move forward a few days. You've gone back. Presumably, have you mentally spent the money by then?
After, what, a few days after winning it, or straight away? Oh, gosh, I mean, we certainly had started to make some plans, but we decided that, we'd take it easy and put the money in the bank and have a good think about it before we actually, dived into anything.
And then you get the call from Paul Smith, the head of Celador, where he says he's not going to give you the money. I mean, that must have been a thunderbolt, wasn't it?
It was. We actually received a letter from David Briggs, the producer, first, the previous Friday, I believe it was the 14th of September, which was a one-liner saying that due to irregularities their end, the show would be deferred until further notice, or words to that effect. At the time, my thinking was that it was to do with the 9/11 tragedy, the Twin Towers tragedy. Because there were a number of documentaries on at the time, and it didn't seem, I thought that it might not have seemed appropriate to have had a £1 million win at a party, a celebration, at the same time as tragic documentaries.
So it was like being hit by a thunderbolt?
It was. On the following Monday, I forget which way it worked, but anyway, we ended up speaking on the telephone, Paul Smith and I, and he basically said to me, in as many words, and I received a letter backing this up the following morning on the doormat, he basically said that he suspected us of cheating and he had reported to the matter to the police.
It's just that I listened the other night to the tape of that conversation and you just didn't sound surprised.
Yeah. Well, I was in my office at the time with a number of people and that's not the sort of news that I wanted to sort of impart at that moment to other people while they were listening over the telephone.
Just read the transcript. Paul Smith, I have to tell you that we have suspicions from viewing the recordings of last Monday's programme and subsequently studying the tapes carefully that there were irregularities during the taping of the show in which you participated. You? Oh, good Lord, no. Paul Smith. Because of that, I have to tell you that these suspicions have been referred to the police.
Yeah.
You, right. Paul Smith. And thus we're not for the moment airing the programme or authorising payment of the cheque. Charles Ingram, right, yeah, well, I mean, I completely refute that, obviously. Good Lord, I'm absolutely gobsmacked. All right, well, thanks for letting me know. Paul Smith, OK, thanks, bye. And that's it. Now, I can't help feeling that if I had just lost £1 million, I would be climbing the walls, I'd be incandescent, I'd be denying it, I'd be vehement. And you just seem to...
But at the time, I thought, well, there's nothing untoward. There was nothing untoward going on. I'm sure that whatever irregularity or suspicion or whatever that they had, whether they bring in the police or not, it would be resolved in just a few days and it wouldn't be a problem and that would be the end of it.
Diana, were you as calm when you heard about the phone conversation?
Well, Charles came home, I think, more or less straight away and told me what had happened. We rang... I think we tried to ring Paul Smith back to find out exactly what was going on, and I think we rang Ruth Settle as well, their press officer, and we had no joy from either of them. We couldn't get through, their phones were turned off or they'd gone home or whatever, and we were just left to stew. We did try and find out what was going on.
Can I just say that this did not come up as evidence in court, and I think that in itself speaks volumes. I no longer have the letter that he sent to me, although I'm having it returned to me now so that I can check the words of the letter against the words of that. I believe that they're probably correct, if only in part.
You see, the thing that struck me listening to it was that it just sounded like a call you'd been anticipating.
No, I certainly wasn't anticipating it. It did come out, it was a shock, it was a complete thunderbolt, and afterwards, I was completely gutted. But at the time, I really didn't think much of it. I just thought, well, fine, something's gone wrong. Didn't know what. I certainly hadn't got a clue about coughing at that stage, and I thought it would be resolved fairly quickly.
I can't help thinking you would have refuted it. I mean, you are the subject of national conversation now in Britain, and this worldwide conversation. And everybody has said, I'd have gone berserk on the phone if someone had said that to me. And you just didn't. You didn't refute it.
Well, I can't remember in detail what I was doing at the time, what I was working on, as it were, but I do know that there are a number of people in the open plan office in which I work, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted to start having an argument or getting angry or whatever on something as cataclysmic as that.
But everyone has been in a position like that, and the thing you say is, right, I can't have this conversation with you, I need to call you straight back. Or can you call me straight back in 2 minutes because I want to talk about this. I just can't imagine letting something like that go. There's suddenly £1 million that is within your grasp and is taken away from you.
Well, I can't remember my exact feelings at the time, but, I'm sure I would have still been completely elated. I mean, I know that nothing happened, remember. And I would have still felt absolutely elated with winning. I had no reason to believe that there would be anything, untoward over the coming days when the suspicions, whatever they may have been, were investigated. So, I didn't see it as a particular problem. You see, I had been thoroughly searched directly after I won my £1 million, and I was told that was routine. So, I mean, I can't remember exactly whether that was directly related, but I may have thought that, there was a degree of commonality here in terms of their concerns about high-value winners, particularly in my case, as I was aware that I behaved unusually and that I answered the questions in a way that was not usual.
OK, we'll talk about that now. When you watched the documentary that was aired recently, which showed the programme going out, what did you think?
I thought it was absolutely disgusting.
What?
Well, the fact that they showed clips of a show that did not represent what happened on that night. You know, to just show the track of the 10 fastest finger contestants to enhance this significant, in inverted commas, coughing, I thought was extremely unfair. I thought it would have been far fairer and frankly more honourable to actually try and portray what Charles would have heard rather than try to highlight what
John,
this programme goes out around the world. I just want to explain... Hang on.
This point is vital.
No, I know, and you'll make it in a second. It's just that the whole point about the coughing, the allegation and what was found to be proved in the court case was that Tecwyn Whittock was coughing to give you the right answers. That was the allegation. That's what the court believed every time that a right answer came up. Go and make your point.
Yeah. Firstly, about the programme, Tonight with Trevor McDonald, that was a wholly one-sided affair. We asked if we could be involved in it, and we were flatly refused. ITV advertised that programme as an opportunity for the public to decide. That is absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. There is no way the public should be told that they can decide on something that is wholly and utterly one-sided. And not only is it one-sided, it is incredibly misleading. The tapes that were shown during that programme, and indeed the tape that was shown on the programme on ITV2 afterwards, were far, far away from what I actually experienced on the night.
Have you met anybody since that programme has gone out who thought you had been badly treated?
Well, there's an article in the Times today. There's a letter in the Times newspaper saying as a result of that programme, the man is absolutely convinced of our innocence. And he is appalled by Martin Bashir and the approach that he and Tonight with Trevor McDonald took with that programme.
Everyone, you know, that I've spoken to in the business, outside the business, some of whom thought beforehand, well, I think that maybe you've been harshly treated, was saying, it was so obvious. I mean, it was laughable.
That's what it was about. It wasn't like that for me in the centre of the
But
room.
there were obvious coughs every time. When you were going round the answers, is it A, name saying what A is? Is it B, saying what B is? Is it C, saying what C is? Is it D?
There is no relation between that coughing, the coughing that people hear on the clips on Tonight with Trevor McDonald, and the programme afterwards that was shown on ITV2. There is certainly no relation between the coughing that was heard on both those programmes and my...
Are you accusing the programme makers of doctoring? It's one thing to amplify the sound.
No, I am not. I cannot do that because I do not know, and nobody knows, other than the programme maker and indeed their editing company, and that's where the tapes have always remained. They've never been taken into custody anywhere else. But I do not know that. All I can tell you and everybody else is that what I heard in the middle of the room and what Chris Tarrant heard in the middle of the room is a million miles away from what those tapes depict.
Yes, but Chris Tarrant isn't listening out for the coughs.
Neither was I. I was in a cocoon just as he was. I was focusing on the questions. I was trying my best to answer those questions.
Okay. If there had been a scam, if there had been a plot, you would have been listening out for the coughs.
I would have had to have been if coughing was the scam, yes.
Yes, and there were coughs coming at regular intervals.
There were 200 coughs from the entire audience. Both people either side of Mr. Whittock, the other contestant, said that they didn't notice him coughing. The people behind him said that they didn't notice him coughing. He is in Chris Tarrant's eye line, and Chris Tarrant has been in that seat for, what, 800 occasions now? He's far more experienced at it than I am.
OK, what about some of the questions? I mean, for example, the pop singer Craig David, who you'd never heard of.
No.
And then there was another group, A1, and you said, yeah, I'm convinced it's A1. Craig David you'd never heard of. Craig David you'd never heard of. And suddenly, there's a cough, I think the programme says from you, and you go for Craig David. And the pattern kept on repeating itself again and again. And then you get to the question about who was responsible for the city planning of Paris, Berlin, da-da-da-da-da.
Well, can I take those two questions as an example, please? Would you like to start on the Craig David one?
On the Craig David question, I certainly did not know the answer to Craig David. I don't think I'd heard of any of those bands before that night, and I still don't really know who they are. But that's not really important.
I thought I'd seen you quoted saying that you would be a good family team because you'd said that Diana knew about the pop and the celebrity.
No, I know about soaps and TV. I know nothing
we would be
about
a good.
pop.
You're right. We would be a good. What do you call it now when you have both contestants? A couple show contestants, because we do have different interests. But one of them is not contemporary pop music.
I interrupted you.
Okay. I don't know anything about pop music. In fact, when I was on the show myself, I had to phone a friend for a music question, a pop music question, so I really know nothing about it. However, can I just say that when we were in court, I don't know how many witnesses came in and spoke about an audience gasp, a collective gasp, when Charles said, A1, I think I'm going to go for that one. The audience gasped. We had endless witnesses in court saying that he heard the gasp and decided to change his mind.
The prosecution did not make an issue of this coughing. It's only Celador afterwards in Tonight with Trevor McDonald that did. She was 22 feet away. There is no way in a million years I could have distinguished her coughing from anybody else's. And in any event, I did not hear any coughing at all.
What about the Baron Haussmann question? Which city he was responsible for? There's one bit where we hear Techno cough and go no.
Right.
No.
Right, I have a stereo mix. I have 2 stereo mixes, that is, with all the channels ready, prepared for television, and then they edit it for television in terms of length. I have 2 of them at home, one given to my legal team shortly after the event, and one given to the legal team before the court case, but it was never shown. On both of those stereo mixes, you cannot hear this no and or cough at all. And yet on the stereo mix that went out on ITV2 after Tonight with Trevor McDonald, the soundtracks have changed. The coughing from the audience is significantly lower, and the significant coughs only on the contestants 1 to 10 track are significantly louder.
But then the Google question again, we go round the houses. What, you know, it's not that you kind of, it's not like you're an army man and you're thinking, should we attack from the north, should we attack from the east, should we attack from the south, should we attack from the west? You didn't seem to have any clue whatsoever on the Google question.
My strategy, if you like, was twofold. Firstly, I was prepared to take risks up to £32,000, and thereafter, if I believed I knew the answer, I was going to go for it. Now, as far as going around the answers is concerned, I would suggest that most contestants, in their mind, and many actually say it as well, but in their mind, they look at all 4 options. Yeah. And all I did was that, but vocally.
But Chris Tarrant was interviewed for this programme talking about how they all thought that it would be miraculously lucky if you got to £32,000. You got all
I'm not thick, by the way, as I was described on Tonight with Trevor McDonald. I'm a member of Mensa, for goodness sake. I have an IQ of 149, and that is within the top 2% of the world's population.
That doesn't mean you've got knowledge of all the answers, though. I mean,
no, but I'm not thick.
Fine, OK.
Can I just say, though, about Charles's behaviour on the night, his going round the answers and seemingly to choose one, then discount it, that is absolutely characteristic of his behaviour in normal life.
The whole programme team was suspicious. They all came out and said...
Tarrant
says it was unlike anything we'd ever seen before, the way you handled yourself on that programme. They're used to the rhythm of these things, and everyone was suspicious.
Beforehand, I did have the opinion that I felt contestants ought to be allowed to sort of talk more and be themselves and so on. And that's all I wanted to be. I just wanted to be myself, make sure, because Diana made a mistake on her £32,000 question, and I think it was a little bit mean of Chris to mention that she appeared ungrateful for her £32,000. Her emotion, if you like, on winning £32,000 was based on the fact that she knew the answer and she could have won £64,000.
Let me move on to that, because you appeared on the show and won £32,000, and again they showed that on the documentary, and you looked utterly miserable when you'd won £32,000 that you hadn't gone further. No. I just want to question the motivation of the two of you. You'd spent £2,000 on premium phone lines to get onto the programme.
No, that's not true. I certainly don't recall spending £2,000. Personally.
The phone calls you spent at football, you tried exceptionally hard to get on the programme. Do you believe... Let me just finish my question. Do you believe that money buys you happiness?
No.
No, I don't, actually.
You hesitated?
No. Well, money can do an awful lot of things towards happiness, but at the end of the day, I am a family man, and I firmly believe that even with the catastrophic effects that this as this case has
But
had
you
on
seem
our family.
driven by money.
At the end of the day,
The
no, that is not true. And I'll come on to greed in a moment, if I may, because that's deeply hypocritical. But at the end of the day, what is important to me is my wife and my children. That is top of the list. And at the end of the day, if money can support that in bringing happiness, then great. But the thing that I get happiness out of most
so why the
is
obsession
my
with
wife
getting
and
on Who
children.
Wants to Be a Millionaire?
There was no obsession. It's a great show. We did enjoy it, and we wanted to have a go. We thought, I mean, everybody
You were
thinks...
obsessed with it.
No, you were told, you, the public rather, were told that we were obsessed by the prosecution. I was not obsessed with that show. As a result of Diana, who was a keen millionaireite, if I can use the expression.
Did you have a fast finger first thing where you were practising?
Yeah, well, Adrian, Diana's brother did, and I borrowed it off him.
So you practised on that.
Yeah,
you spent an awful lot of money getting through on the phone lines.
Robert Bridges, the fourth millionaire winner, he had a laptop computer, and as a result of reading about my fastest finger machine, he used his computer in exactly the same way.
See, what I don't understand, and I think a lot of people struggle to understand, is you had 3 beautiful children, you had status as an officer in the British Army, you had an attractive house in Wiltshire. What was it? Could you not live within your means?
I didn't do this. Greed was not the motive. That is deeply hypocritical, given the nature...
Well, it's a straight question. It's not hypocritical, it's a straight question.
Given the nature of the show, let's look at the victims here. The victims, from my perspective, are the 3 defendants and the taxpayer at the end of the day, because there was obviously a cost involved in the case. Who benefits out of this? Everybody else. On a financial perspective, when I say everybody else, obviously not the general public because of the taxpayer part, and the police benefit from the kudos perspective, particularly after the Burrell case and so on.
Let me move on then to who is going to benefit now. What are you going to do? Are you going to sell your story?
Well, we have to remain within the law, and the Press Complaints Commission have, I believe, in the last couple of months, strengthened the...
You could sell your story abroad.
Yeah. I could do. I mean, I haven't got that far yet. At the moment...
Thinking about it?
I have certainly thought about it, yes.
Film deals? Book deals?
We haven't come across film deals. Dan has already written a book, but I don't believe that will be published now because it's so out of date. Whether we consider a book in the future remains to be seen. But the only reference we have heard to films is that at the end of Tonight with Trevor McDonald, in fact, with Celador stating that they were either considering or were going to make a film. Each of the defendants is separate on that perspective, as indeed, and I consider it a weakness in the court case, but each one had their own sort of cases, and the prosecution, of course, had their combined case. I think it's unlikely that, from my perspective, I will appeal, because as far as I'm concerned, everything in court that was relevant to me came up.
Final question. So you're going to remain, then, a convicted fraudster, but have you still got a way that you can make $1 million? By whether books, by whether through films? It's not a question of wanting to make $1 million. We are keen to clear our names and to restore our reputation. How we're going to do that, I don't know. If an appeal in the legal courts is out of the question, I don't know. You're giving up on an appeal? I don't know. It's still under review. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. My legal team are actually looking at that, but again, I think it's probably unlikely. We are £460,000 overdrawn as a result of the civil action against Celador and indeed the fines and costs sentenced under the criminal court. We have to pay the fine within now 2 months and the costs within another 5 months. We can't reach those at the moment, and if we don't find a way of doing it, and we can't through the press, the media and so on, because we cannot accept payment, and we have not accepted any payment at all. I'm sure some people would hold you up as some kind of morality tale. Maybe not that you did it. Well, it shouldn't have been in the criminal court at all. But the verdict was perverse in the case of the when you look at the evidence. But do you see that some people might see you as a morality tale? I suppose if people believe this happened and they believe that we were greedy people, but if they knew us, they would know that we are not greedy people. Charles and Diana Ingram, thank you very much indeed. You're very welcome. Thank you.